there's nothing that worries me more than the idea that AI will probably replace humans in all likelihood from certain jobs, and I don't think that people have considered how to safeguard that.
The proportion of females to males in the tech industry is disgusting, and it's also, I think, quite dangerous because so many things could be prevented, so many bad things could be prevented in tech if there was diversity.
I would say hackathons are probably the best ways at the moment to learn new skills and learn from incredible people around you.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Teens in AI podcast. Today I'll be talking to our guests from last week's episode, Carly Kind, Director of the Ada Lovelace Institute, Professor Rose Luckin, Director of Educate and Professor of Learner-Centered Design at UCL, and Elena Sinel, Teens in AI founder. I'll be talking to them about their careers advice and general advice for young people interested in tech, AI and ethics, and their general thoughts and fears about the future of AI and its challenges. I started the episode by asking first Professor Luckin and then Carly what they thought the biggest challenges facing young people interested in tech and AI were.
I think, and it's a little bit mundane, I'm afraid. I haven't got an exciting answer. It is the challenge of getting everybody to understand enough about it so that they're not used by the creators of the AI, so that it's about, that is the biggest challenge. I mean, when the House of Lords Select Committee on AI reported, I loved the fact that they couched their recommendations in this notion of everybody is entitled to be educated about AI. That is the biggest challenge. And it's a challenge for so many reasons. A, because there's a lot of people and we need them to understand, and it's unfamiliar and we haven't got enough people who do understand, who can communicate it. So there's those kind of very practical complications. But there are also harder complications in a way, in that actually, for many of the big tech companies, understanding AI could be a big disadvantage for their business model. So that's a huge challenge. And I don't think all big tech companies are bad. I'm not trying to say that. But their business models are built quite largely on people not understanding AI. So I think that's, mundane as it is, I think that's probably the biggest challenge.
So I think one big challenge is the environmental impact of tech and AI. And I think that's kind of a bit of a sideline issue at the moment, and it will become more and more prominent as we realise that the tech industry is a major emitter of carbon. I think at the moment it's somewhere around 3-4%, which is the same as the airline industry. So we think a lot about how we should stop using planes as much, but we think less about how the technologies that we use require data centers, which that in turn have huge carbon footprints. I think beyond that, I think we have a tech sector and a digital economy, if you want to talk about it that way, which is premised on a really extractive way of thinking about data that puts data into the hands of a very few powerful companies, and which deprives smaller companies from getting a foothold to start up. And if we want AI that is truly made for everyone, and AI applications which think about a range of different ways of living that are outside of Silicon Valley, we're going to need to diversify the digital economy to allow smaller players in. And then I think beyond that, it's about designing tech and AI which allows people to be different and to fall outside the majority or the mean. We talked really early on about how the A-levels algorithm optimized for the majority. I think most tech optimizes for the majority, actually. And we need to get to a place where there's technology, there's AI for everyone. That means people outside of Western educated industrialized countries and people in developing countries who have much less access to tech in their language that addresses their lifestyles. And I think that's a big challenge that we need to think more and more about.
I asked young people the same question about what they thought the biggest challenges facing young adults interested in tech and AI were. Many of their answers focused more around the social implications of the lack of diversity in the tech industry and the large potential for bias that this causes.
I think the biggest challenge I face as a young person interested in tech and AI is a disastrous lack of diversity in the industry. So, like you were saying, I am a woman, and not even that, I'm also, I guess, Asian. So, I come from an ethnic background. So the lack of diversity, even actually in this field, I think what it's done is contribute to flawed systems that perpetuate gender and racial biases in general. And I think what it is we don't have the opportunities, I guess, as disadvantaged individuals to really showcase our true talent and how we can actually create a real impact. It's also, I think, quite dangerous because so many things could be prevented, so many bad things could be prevented in tech if there was diversity. My go-to example is if you give a group of women, a group of white men, and a group of coloured people the same kind of specifications to build a robot, but give them free will to do whatever they want with it, the white men, the women, and the coloured people will all come up with different things, and they'll all have different biases because they're not integrated and they're not thinking about what the other team, what challenges they face and what they'll be solving.
With such a large variety and number of challenges in the future of AI, I asked Professor Luckin and Carly what their advice would be to the young adults who will one day be tackling these issues.
Well, first of all, I'd say you're doing the right thing by listening to this podcast. And there are lots of other podcasts on tech and AI that are great ways to learn about this field. One of the board members of the Ada Lovelace Institute is Azar, and Azim has a great podcast on AI and tech. I would suggest getting involved with groups like Teens in AI, but also Black in AI, Latinx in AI. If you go on the Black in AI website, they've got a list of a few different groups that you can affiliate with. Follow the Ada Lovelace Institute if you're interested in thinking about the social impacts of AI. And I would say just take a critical eye to everything you see and hear about technology and always come at these issues just thinking, trying to kind of unpick them and be critical about them, because if you're questioning what you see and hear around you, then you're in a great place to build a great career in this field.
I think get out there, and there's lots of free resources now, and I think even more so now. I mentioned the Finnish course, but Coursera is full of, I shouldn't predominantly favour one MOOC platform, but there are loads of platforms with lots of resources out there. But also I think experiment, whatever you've got in your hands, whether it's an Alexa or a phone with a voice activated assistant or whatever, explore it, try and understand what's going on. I think that's the thing. If you're excited and you're enthusiastic, there are loads of things out there that you can try, and lots of opportunities to, if you're really interested in actually building AI, there's lots of, if you go on GitHub, there's lots of algorithms you can try, you can test. It's becoming more accessible, but it's still not that accessible. So I think that would be one thing. We've got a set of free webinars for, they're not really designed for a young audience, but they, nevertheless, they might appeal on what we call AI readiness, which is about understanding something about data and how you pick the right data and how you process the right data. They're free on our website. I think, there's a lot out there that you can try and you can get involved in. And just pester your teachers I showed 4 teachers, but, to find out more, to let you find out more, say, look, we really want to understand this. Can you help us understand this? I think just get under the hood and try and understand it. But don't worry about having to code unless you particularly like coding. Think about, what's this AI being used for? Why is it using that data? What's happening here? That's where to go.
I also asked Elena Sinel, Teens in AI founder, the same question.
I definitely would research various workshops and webinars on meetup.com, depending on what you're passionate about, whether it's AI or whether it's software engineering, whether it's ethics. There is a lot happening in the world of tech. Eventbrite is always a great one where you can find events happening online, because most events have gone virtual. And the beauty with that is you get a chance to participate in webinars or online workshops, anywhere in the world, really. So there could be a really cool quantum computing workshop happening in San Francisco, and you could join it just because you are online, and everything right now is online. With us, obviously, there are lots of hackathons we are planning, and if you are part of our newsletter and following us on Instagram or Twitter, you will know there is an event happening literally in 10 days. Called Ada Lovelace Hackathon, and this is a fantastic opportunity for young people of all genders to get involved in trying to tackle a challenge using artificial intelligence and data science. And we will be running more events throughout the year. Roles are diverse, so even if you are not a techie, if you're not interested in technology as such, there is a lot you can still learn by being part of these hackathons. In fact, we've had a lot of teenagers in recent years and months who have never coded and have got very little background or understanding of how technology works, join us online. And really sometimes even a 2-day event or a week-long event gives them enough understanding for them to even want to actually embrace coding and pursue artificial intelligence as a career in the future. So we've had great traction. So if you're passionate, if you're listening to this podcast and passionate about what's happening in the space of artificial intelligence and data science, hackathons are probably the best ways at the moment to learn new skills and learn from incredible people around you.
Another great way to get involved with these topics is to check out the blog posts that we release with each episode. They cover a variety of topics usually related to the conversation that week. They can be found on the Teens in AI medium. To finish off the episode, I asked Carly, Professor Luckin, and our young adults what scared them most about the future of AI.
Without doubt, the wrong people being in charge of what happens with it. It's not the AI, it's always the people, if you think about autonomous weapons, which are deeply scary, it's still people who make decisions about what to allow the AI to do. I don't believe that there's this kind of evil AI that's going to be a conscious sentient being that's going to sort of take us over. I do believe there's a huge risk that we will be enticed to hand over too much of our lives to AI because it makes things easy, and that will be a huge mistake. I mean, I think Noel Yuval Harari, in his most recent book, 21 Lessons for 21st Century, hit the nail on the head when he said, obviously not in these words, but in essence, you'd better make sure you understand yourself in great detail and really thoroughly, because if you don't, the AI will. And I think that's the thing. It's easy to hand over difficult things to AI because most of us are inherently lazy, let's be honest. But in doing that, we really run a risk. So do we want to move all of our intelligent decision making to an AI when it comes to, say, I don't know, the judiciary? Do we want to have AI systems making decisions about whether people are guilty or innocent? Do we want to, where is that decision going to sit? That's the important thing. And it's humans who make that decision. So that's what scares me the most.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. I think probably for me, scares is the wrong word, because it kind of implies that the future's already written and I'm just in the audience, kind of passively watching it unfold. I think that there's so many paths that AI development could take from this point forward. And many of them are really exciting and many of them are really wonderful. And so it's less about being scared of where things are going to go, but more about being incentivized to see them go in a particular direction. And I think that that's a direction which moves us away from a very narrow mainstream conception of how AI and tech should be built and how it should benefit people, to something much more broader and interactive that involves communities, brings people along for the ride, and sees us all thinking, actually, this could be an incredible thing for work and for leisure and for what it means to be a person with meaning in the world, not just something that is a risk to us all. So, but to get to that point, as I said, we need so many more people in the room. We need young people, we need teens in AI, we need kind of a range of different backgrounds, ethnicities, races, everything, because, it's only by getting more and differing views around the table that we're going to see this whole discipline move in a different direction, away from this kind of white male Silicon Valley dominated approach to technology and something more different and more exciting.
AI at the moment is being used to increase productivity, improve efficiency. There's nothing that worries me more than the idea that AI will probably replace humans in all likelihood from certain jobs. And I don't think that people have considered how to safeguard that. I think most people sort of try and wishfully think that no, AI will never replace humans, but I think in certain industries that's very much possible, and I don't think we've properly contingency planned for that eventuality.
Businesses and public sectors are not aligning with ethical frameworks that are already in place, really, when creating algorithms or AI tech products. I feel like we're so fixated on trying to generate an economic profit and, maybe collecting data for sometimes really fishy purposes, that we actually forget that consumer-focused AI products need to be human-centered. We need to put the people first.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Next week, my co-host Anisha and I will be talking to Dr. Indra Joshi, Director of AI at NHSX. We will be talking about the potential of AI in the battle against COVID and the future of AI in healthcare today.